Next up, I'd like to introduce Bill Lai, Chairman and CEO of Knightscope.
This will allow me to not need gates in front of my own house.
I think robots will find a terrorist.
I think robots will protect my school.
It's the next big thing out of Silicon Valley.
I think robots will keep our community safe.
I think robots will change the world.
All right, good evening, everyone. Oh, come on, it's Rise of the Robots. Good evening, everyone. All right, good. Very happy to be here. I'm Bill Lee, I'm the CEO of Knightscope, and I'm gonna talk to you about autonomous data machines and how we're gonna use a combination of hardware and software to predict and prevent crime. Crime is a very difficult problem that we all have to deal with, including cell phones going off. It's $1 trillion negative economic impact on our economy. That's a hidden tax and every single person in this room has to pay. And for some reason, our society has largely accepted that. You turn on CNN every night, some awful bloody thing happens, and we just click to the next channel and it seems to be okay. I'm here to tell you this has got to stop. We have to have a different level of attitude and innovation to address a very big problem that affects all of us. So we're developing an end-to-end technology solution to predict and prevent crime using robotics, predictive analytics, big data, autonomous technologies, and sensors. It's a crazy mashup of all sorts of crazy stuff that's going on in Silicon Valley to address a very specific problem. Just so you make sure that you understand that this is rather impactful on all of us. Every 26 seconds, a violent crime occurs. A property crime occurs every 3.5 seconds. So think of that. One murder every 36 minutes. Somehow, again, we've gotten to a point where that seems to be acceptable. I don't think it is. Well, we live in Silicon Valley or the SF Bay Area. It doesn't really affect us. Everything's fine here. Well, I don't know. 29,000 violent crimes in 2012, 14,000 aggravated assaults, larceny almost 85,000. Those numbers are pretty high. Property crime, 137,000. Events, that's a lot. And the investment thesis here, part of it is our plan is going to go from 7 billion people to 9 billion people. And I can tell you, having traveled around the world, our law enforcement apparatus and security globally is just not going to scale. We can't just keep adding more people. Well, we'll add more guards and more officers. We'll add more people. We literally can't afford it. So we've got to find a better solution. What's the market look like globally? It's $500 billion. $205 billion spent on the private side, and nearly $400 billion a year spent by our governments. And that is a lot of money spent to try to keep us all safe and secure as possible. So we define security 1.0 as analog. Big, fat, dirty old car, a human, and maybe a CB radio. And then that went on to evolve into maybe security 2.0. It's digital. Humans, big, fat, dirty old car, and maybe a little bit of data. Maybe a laptop in a cruiser or something to that effect. And what we're defining as security 3.0 is robotic. That very important strategic combination of humans and robots and actual actionable intelligence. So why is the problem so bad? Like, how did we get here? And I love my country. I was born in New York. I'm still very upset over 9/11, so the rest of my life I'm just going to dedicate to better securing our country. Although I love my country, it is strategically flawed in this particular area. So we have $600 billion a year that gets spent to provide our troops every level of capability you might ever imagine. And I'm fine with that. That's great. But we spend a tenth of that on securing the same people on our own soil that get up every morning, are willing to take a bullet for you and your family, and the level of technology that we provide to them as a country is beneath the dignity of our nation. It really is. And so there's 1 million private security guards that get up every morning, 1 million law enforcement first responders, and they're put in harm's way, and their capabilities are not even a tenth of what a soldier has in a theater of war. So that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is the way our country grew up, it's very fragmented. So if you want a new submarine or a new jet fighter, well, there's a whole military complex to build it. There's strategists, there's technologists, there's finance people. There's an appropriations process. There's a Secretary of Defense actually signs off on that new submarine or jet fighter, and there's someone actually in charge. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Department of Justice have no federal jurisdiction over the 19,000 law enforcement agencies in our country. So the Mountain View Police Department is different than San Francisco, different than the California Highway Patrol, different than everyone else in between. And every chief and sheriff is king or queen unto themselves with their own budgets, their own priorities, and there's basically no one in charge. That leads to a very fragmented mess and leaves our folks that put themselves in harm's way. So let's look at the private security industry just by itself. So this is the mall cop. It could be someone securing an event or anything like that. So there's 1 million private security guards just in the States, as I mentioned. Very fragmented industry as well. So G4S and Securitas, top 2 firms in the world with 300 to 600,000 employees on their payroll. And these guys command less than 10% market share, single digits for these 10, 11, $12 billion companies. So again, very fragmented and a lot of difficulties in running this business. 100 to 400% employee turnover rates. Imagine that. You get a new team every quarter or every year. This is worse than the fast food industry. So think about that person who's on the graveyard shift at the Stanford Mall, not all too happy about staying in that job. So the onboarding costs, the offboarding costs, the employees aren't happy, the security company's not happy because if you look at their margins, they're pretty pitiful. So for every maybe $25 of revenue you bring in, you keep $2 of gross margin. That's not sustainable. And the clients aren't too happy with the service. So something's got to give. So what if we can develop a set of technologies that could cut crime by 50%? Just pause reality for a moment. We have the magic wand. We can cut crime by 50%. What would happen? Housing values. Would the value of your home increase? Probably. If crime was cut by 50%, your insurance bill should probably go down because you're probably not putting in a lot of claims, and the insurance companies would be quite happy with you guys not filing that many more claims because someone didn't break into your home. Financial markets, do they love risk? Depending on the profile, usually risk and volatility isn't great for a majority of the market. This part of the market that obviously loves that. Quality of life would be impacted tremendously. The viability of your business would be impacted. The safety of your family. And so why did we start Knightscope? So we founded the company April of 2013 after the Sandy Hook shootings on the East Coast. So what kind of triggered it was, if you're familiar with it, a disturbed person went into an elementary school and shot up 26 people. Went on the news and somehow everyone said that's okay and just move on. 138,000 schools in this country, 19,000 law enforcement agencies. You're never going to have an armed officer in every single school. It's just not going to happen. So we need a new level of innovation to at least curtail a significant amount of that nonsense happening. What if we could make the U.S. the safest country in the world? Think about the massive inflow of investment that would occur here. You want to fix infrastructure, education, all sorts of things can happen if we fix one basic problem that unites all of us, which is crime is a big problem. And what if we came up with that technology? I don't know, stodgy law enforcement agencies not going to adopt these new technologies. Well, the small amount of innovation that has occurred between tasers and body armor and license plate recognition systems and in-car video, curves look pretty good, actually. The sector's starved for innovation and starved for capital. This, again, is not an investment thesis for a fund, right? You think there's a bunch of limited partners sitting around Sand Hill Road, let's put a fund together and let's go invest and disrupt the $500 billion sector? No, that's not part of what they're looking at, especially in a very fragmented, kind of not cohesive marketplace. So what's our solution? As you probably saw on the way in, We call these the Knightscope K5s, autonomous data machines, probably the smallest ones we'll build. And the first line of defense for law enforcement is to have a physical presence. To physically be there makes a difference. So I could put a marked law enforcement vehicle in front of your home or your office, and criminal behavior changes, right? Most criminals aren't all that bright. They're not the Hollywood type where whatever you see on the latest James Bond movie or your latest drama series. They're looking for the path of least resistance, right? How can I get away with something as quickly and efficiently as possible? So if you actually have a presence there, that in itself will deter crime as part of the solution. So these are 5 foot tall, 3 foot wide, 300 pounds, intentionally slightly overweight. And they're intended to roam around autonomously, meaning not remote control. And the way we set this up is basically a geofenced area, like a sandbox. Don't leave this area. Don't hit anything in the way. And if there was a pothole there, we kind of make sure to go around it. And the idea is to develop a platform that can see, feel, hear, and smell. Put all the technologies that you can in, able to gather as much data you can from the environment. And using lithium-ion batteries, it also recharges itself, might be of interest. This is opposite the effect that you would have on an electric vehicle, right? So electric vehicles, you're looking for that 100, 200, 300, hopefully 400 miles one day range. What you're trying to do here is optimize for monitoring and surveillance, right? So maybe you want to take the coffee break approach, which is let's go monitor for 45 minutes and then go take a 10-minute break and recharge. So these will find at the appropriate battery level, will go around and recharge themselves autonomously, leaving the guards and the law enforcement guys be able to not focus on these and actually focus on their job. And so as I mentioned, see, feel, hear, and smell. So 360-degree daytime, nighttime video, so we've got cameras all around. Audio event detection, so think about voice recognition. A lot of people work on that, trying to get rid of all that noise that's in the background. Well, that noise is actually kind of interesting for us. A car's tire squealing, a door shutting, a car starting, glass breaking, cell phone going off. Over time you can learn that 7 cell phones going off in the parking lot on Wednesday at 11 o'clock in the morning is okay. 2 cell phones going off at 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, all right, so there's all sorts of things you can do with that. Also, we've got on this other side here, an optical character recognition sensor. It'll read 300 license plates a minute and run it against a database. So every 4 hours we get a dump from the government, every license plate that's stolen, every car that's stolen, and any felon tagged to that license plate. So we can obviously issue a warning if that gets detected. It has a couple lasers on here, so there's a LiDAR here and a LiDAR here. And it does every 25 milliseconds a scan of the environment and creates a 3D kind of virtual world in which it operates, so it can dynamically update its internal map. And we superimpose the input from the wheel encoders, so kind of like your odometer works, and inertial measurement unit and a little backup GPS. And you combine all that and you can get these machines to operate on their own. Analogous to the Google self-driving car, but we focus on private roads and less than 25 miles an hour. And then for seaports or airports, you might want WMD threat detection capability for biochemical radiation and pathogens. You also probably saw outside in the van. If you haven't, feel free to stop by on the way out. The live version of the Knightscope Security Operations Center. So you want to give our clients a browser-based user interface that they can review the events that have occurred, go look at the raw data if they need be, run the plates, and also just do some general data analysis. And so the end goal is, can you create a dynamic crime map or heat map that would take 100+ data sets of existing data? So if you're IBM or Palantir, you're crunching a ton of data to try to do predictive policing. And you're looking at any primary, secondary, tertiary impact on crime. So obviously, number of officers in the area affects crime. The city's budget affects crime. New graffiti on the stop sign this morning affects crime. Was the street paved in the last 7 years? Construction permits trending upwards or downwards? Almost like a hedge fund would look at a market. Same type of approach. What's missing, though, is having that real-time on-site data that these machines would provide. And this is a lot of data that comes out of those machines that you saw downstairs. 90 terabytes of data per machine per annum. So obviously some challenge in moving that data around. But let's just say, for example, I can tell you there's 2 stolen cars in the area, ran the plates, they're geotagged, timestamped. I don't know why, but there's 4 people doing this rapid hand gesture motion. There's 2 people horizontal in the parking lot, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, who ran the thermal image, doesn't look right. And the ambient noise levels are really high for this time of day and day of week. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to send an alert, right? Compare that to a 911 call. You ever heard of recording? A 911 call sounds like what? Staticky cell phone, someone screaming at the other end, trying to explain who they are, where they are, and what's happening, right? And usually when, let's say it's a shooter usually has 9 to 15 minutes before they know they're going to get taken down, right? Every minute counts. So if you had the ability to actually make that call earlier and actually provide that data so the law enforcement authorities can gather the appropriate resources and deploy them effectively, that extra minute that we could save someone's life. So that gets really interesting and important. So what about privacy? What about privacy? People invading my privacy. Well, when you go to the ATM machine or you leave your car at the airport or you go to the mall, is your privacy being invaded? Probably not. Security guard standing in front of your child's school invading your privacy? Probably not. First, the emphasis is that you're in public, so the sense of privacy is kind of a little odd question. But all the technology that we're developing is already in use today. We're putting it in a different package and making it a little bit more effective. But if a private sector company wants to play the game that the government does, which is we're going to keep all this data and you guys don't get to see any of it, probably not a good idea. So the theory we want to try out is, can we crowdsource security? So think about the Boston Marathon bombing. Everyone was actually trying to help. Go look on Twitter, go look on YouTube, see how many videos are uploaded up on CNN. Everyone is actually trying to help find these guys, right? What if you had a device and a technology that everyone kind of trusted, and you were able to do that? The impact on the criminal would be quite high, right? So let's say you're a criminal, there's 200 machines running around this community, and the community's engaged, the faculty, the mayor, the students, the parents, everyone says, okay, we're going to try this. And you know that if you go try to steal that red car over there, we're going to turn on all the sensors for everyone to see everything. Your likelihood of getting caught, close to 100%. That's the last place you're going to go try to do some mischief, right? So I think we've got an opportunity in certain locations to actually be able to prove that you can crowdsource security. So how much does one of these bad boys cost? Well, first, if you ever deal with law enforcement, so my co-founders are former Dallas area police officer. Over our careers, I'm an ex-Ford Motor Company executive. We've probably met 50,000 officers. We've got relationships with about 2,500 law enforcement agencies and across 3 presidential administrations at the highest levels of government. And you start learning about the challenges that they have. The first thing you want to do is make sure you're not in the capital budget. You want to be in the operating budget. So that's the key thing. Second, if it's a new technology, you want the ability to adopt that technology to go quickly. So we offer this on a machine as a service business model. So a guard costs you, depends what you want the guard to do, but $20 to $35 an hour. So we offer these at $6.25 per hour. So these can run 24/7, 365, recharge themselves, and one throat to choke. So it's our responsibility for all the maintenance, any issues that come up. And we provide that as a service, something quite economical. Let's say you're a massive mall developer. Your private security bill annually is about $100 million. We walk into a CFO's office and say we can cut it more than half. You're going to get their attention. So this gets really interesting financially for the clients, which are very much initially focused on business-to-business, corporate campuses, retailers, both on the back end and front end, the private security firms themselves. Any Fortune 500 company's got a security issue. There's one locally here. I don't know the breakdown between cyber and physical security, but they get 2,500 threats a day. So it's certainly an opportunity to provide a lot of value for our client and for our investors. So we bootstrapped most of last year. We were in the State Farm Insurance Accelerator last year, won the Plug and Play Winter Expo, and then all sorts of interest came in from the media. And clients were probably sitting, I don't know, sitting on a few $100 million worth of annual recurring revenue as we finish our beta deployments and start working on production deployments. So where could you see these? Obviously, we talked about schools, shopping centers, auto dealerships, power plants, any high-value target out there, anywhere outdoors that you might see a private security guard could be an opportunity to provide smarter eyes and ears for those clients. So I wasn't sure if I was going to add this slide or not, but I ventured I might as well. So every time some technologist or roboticist gets up on stage, some analyst, some media person is going to say, you're taking jobs away from so-and-so. You're going to kill the economy. You're going to, all sorts of stuff. So what's plotted up here is the unemployment rate from 1890 till 2009, right? And so what's happened during that period? Well, let's see. Electricity, the work of the devil, has come upon us. The automobile, let's see. The phone, anybody? ATM machine, the internet, all sorts of stuff. The world's going to end. The world's going to end. You know who the joker in all this stuff is? The Great Depression, the S&L crisis, the Great Recession. Time to throw some rocks back. It's the bankers. It's not the technologists, it's not the roboticists that did that. The greatest job killers have been the bankers. And so for anyone who's an entrepreneur in here, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Do what you're doing and do what's right, and just keep going. And so just to make the point, this robot will not eat your lunch. So we raised a $1.5 million seed round that was 50% oversubscribed earlier in the year. We're wrapping up a $5 million Series A this month, and the use of proceeds is to go ahead and turn these prototypes into a production release, as we have a lot of clients, both in the States and globally, for us to deploy. It's about a dozen of us. Again, I'm an ex-Ford Motor Company executive. My head of engineering that some of you met, Dr. Arnie Staszek, is a former VW executive, former PhD in electrical engineering, Stanford fellow. My chief designer is ex-Ford as well, and my head of software engineering is ex-Deloitte. And we got a lot of bright people on the team, and we're always looking for great talent. So if you have a desire to go try to change the world, go to Knightscope.com, send us your resume. We'd love to chat with you, and I really appreciate you guys spending some time this evening to learn about Knightscope. Thank you very much. I guess we're taking questions because we're going back one slide. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes?
Was making it that size a choice for you?
Was making it that size a choice for you? Yes. So we have the same challenge. So the biggest risk in the business, I'm happy to disclose, is in the highest sense of the word, the human-machine interface. If all of you walked in this evening and saw these machines running around 3 times faster and turning 4 times faster, you would have had a completely different reaction, right? So we have the same issue that an officer does. An officer has to have a commanding presence, command respect and authority, but you can't scare a child and you can't scare grandma, right? So how do you think through everything on the machine? Every surface tension that you might have, the radii, the font, the color scheme, everything on there to get something that's at least minimally socially acceptable, hopefully socially engaging, right? And so one of the reasons we want to be very careful as we roll this out, we want to get feedback. Like, it was interesting to watch everyone this evening, and we'll continue to learn more as people play all sorts of games with the, what was the first one that happened to us? The hug the robot test. Some girl decides, oh my God, it's so cute, and she just grabs on and holds on for dear life. Okay, that wasn't part of the test.
Okay, so let's do that thing.
The other was the kids. We had a demo with an incoming strategic investor, and from across the street, a library, a bunch of, I don't know, 5, 10-year-old kids decided to show up, and let's play Surround the Robot, right? And so there's a bunch of stuff that we still have to work through, but yes, we need to continue to iterate and make sure the design puts a smile like that on everyone's face. Yes, ma'am.
What happens if a
What happens if a criminal kicks it down? Another robot comes over and kicks the criminal. No. So it has 3 levels of alarm. So the first is, stop touching me alarm. The next one is I'm going to rotate and do some lights and stuff. There's actually a very loud car alarm on here. And it's, so we transmit the data 3 different ways. One of them is through 4G or LTE if it gets somehow off premises. But keep in mind, this is not intended to be a one-for-one human-machine replacement. So we think, depending on the client and the terrain, you probably, for every 10 posts, you maybe have 7 machines and 3 guards that are probably better trained, more highly paid individuals to be able to utilize their tools more effectively. And on top of that, you're going to have someone at the Knightscope Security Operations Center monitoring everything. So it's going to make for some really fun YouTube moments, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Yes?
Also New York born and bred.
Go New York.
So 9/11 happened as well. Actually, it was supposed to be on the 100% before.
Wow.
Speaking of the tech company. Anyway, you said very quick that one of the issues that you may have is what you do with very rapid, quick hit crimes, where a camera can be disabled by a spray can, by a cover that's thrown over the machine. Of course, you have sensors, you know that that's going to trigger an alarm. But for crimes that are very quick, get in, get out, grab something.
So the question is, if it's a really quick crime, someone comes over and just puts something on it and does their thing. So similar to a couple of officers, in some communities they ride 2 up, meaning you never go into X community without having one officer in the driver's seat and one in the passenger. Same theory. So you want eventually the machines to keep an eye on each other. So if you got a coordinated attack of 7 machines, you got bigger problems than someone stealing some gum, right? But again, it's going to happen. This is not going to be 100%, but I bet you, and I'm willing to bet a lot, that this is going to actually help a lot of businesses and a lot of communities. Yes, sir.
While we're on the topic of places in the Northeast, how does that handle rain and snow and ice?
How does the K5 handle snow, rain, and ice? I'm allergic to that stuff, so I don't know. So the K5 is probably the smallest machine we'll build. We have a lot of clients in the snow belt, maybe have rough terrain around a data center or something like that. This is intended for ADA compliant areas, so wherever a wheelchair can go, flat surfaces. There is a K7 in the works that can get over speed bumps and rough terrain and ice and snow and that sort of thing. So think about having the same sensor payload, same compute stack, same nav stack, same everything except a different form factor to enable getting over more difficult terrains. Yes? If the criminal had the mask, how do you do face recognition? Wow, how old are you? Great question. You're not going to do a really good job, but you will say, I saw a guy with a mask. Probably need to find him. Yes?
What are the insurance and liability implications and costs?
What are the insurance
Implications and costs?
Insurance implications and costs. All right. Insurance implications and costs. So one oddly known fact. So autonomous vehicles and autonomous anything kind of opens up a little bit of a can of worms, right? Because the only thing that's really technically on the books, if I get this right, your dog is autonomous and you're the owner. So that's about the extent of the law. So we're operating at 1, 3, 5 miles an hour max. So you're looking at very minimal damage. Our risk management guys at Marsh will put together a normal product liability, general insurance requirement. But it's a little bit of an unknown territory, to be frank. So that's why we're working with some of the insurance companies to help better define that. Because as unmanned vehicles or self-driving vehicles or self-driving machines or whatever you want to call it, that area is gray, is to put it politely. Oh, lots of questions. Yes, sir. Where are we where are we sourcing the materials on the product? You probably can't read this, so I'll read it to you. Designed and built in Silicon Valley.
How long did it take to make the prototype?
How long did it take to make this prototype? So this is version 2.0 actually. So we started in earnest October of last year. So we did 1.0 back in December, 1.5 in February, and this was basically done last month. Yes, sir.
So you talked about the sandbox earlier. Does it define the sandbox? Is it self-learned? Oh, there's a pothole there. I've scanned the area. I know I shouldn't go in that area. Or do you, as a programmer, go, here's your sandbox, here's where you can...
So who defines the sandbox? Does the machine define the sandbox, or do we define the sandbox, or does the client define the sandbox? Both. The big sandbox, you want to demarcate. Like, don't go over the cliff and don't go into the street and that basic sort of thing. Usually potholes don't show up overnight, so you probably go in and scribe that one in manually. But the whole thing is for the machine to do it dynamically as it's roving around. And eventually you want all the machines to share that one view of life. Yes, ma'am. Have we done test runs, and if you have, can you describe them? There have been burn-in tests. There have been 32-hour runs back-to-back to see if 3 machines could share a charge pad. We've done maybe, I'm going to lose track here, somewhere between 50 and 100 demos with different clients, and gotten a lot of different feedback, all good stuff. But we're in beta test right now, and we'll start larger deployments next year. Yes?
Are there any practical limits on human density, like large crowd, stadium, airport, that sort of thing?
Are there any practical limits to human density? So we've been asked, we had to turn it down, but we were asked to do the World Cup, for example. That'd be very interesting for us. Timing wasn't great, so the Olympics is, we've been contacted a couple of times for the 16 and 2020. Super Bowl is an opportunity, National Art Gallery, large malls. No, but at some point it does become, if it's a complete, just a crowd, if you can't maneuver an object like that around, it becomes difficult. I mean, it's a little bit more common sense than any practical technical limits. Something else we'll test. I mean, that was also interesting for us to just see how many people could crowd around it, and we did part of that little test, unbeknownst to you, this evening. Yes?
The models after K5, do you believe that you'll be able to implement an advanced artificial intelligence?
For the models after the K5, do we think we can implement artificial intelligence? Yes, to a level, but I'm not a big fan of, how do I say this? I'm not a big fan of sitting in a laboratory working on something and hoping that one technology will get us to the promised land. I don't like business plans that have like miracle occurs here and then off we go, right? People have been working on AI for 3, 4, 5 decades. I've lost track now. So if it's something that is readily available and scalable, so for example, we're not developing intellectual property around sensors. There's millions of sensors being developed by all sorts of very capable people. Us coming up with a new optical character recognition sensor, probably not a good idea, especially for a startup. Probably a similar answer on the AI side of things. Yes?
How many machines currently work together? How many machines can work together?
How many machines can currently work together? Still working on that one. We'll know soon. Part of the challenge is actually the data, is because you turn on 7 machines and you start pumping out that amount of data all in one time. It's the pipe's the problem. It's not anything else.
What is the data channel? How do you share the data? It's through LTE?
Right now it's through corporate, if you're at Wi-Fi, and then backup is 4G LTE, And then over time, we'll probably use the charge pad to dump non-time sensitive data. Yes, ma'am.
So is there, in a very tactical situation or like say another school shooting happened, will somebody in the van be controlling this, or will you already have it pre-programmed to know what to do and go in and just identify the person? I mean, or is there a time to like equip it with guns or something?
Oh dear. So in a school shooting, who's going to control it in the van, or if someone can, and are you going to put any lethal weapons on it? So let me answer that part first. Bright red line for us. A lot of people have asked, hey, can you put a taser on it? Can you put X on it? This is intended for surveillance and monitoring. Once you cross that line, you're never going to gain the trust of a community to do what we're trying to do. So that's bright red line for us. So you should be able to drag and drop a machine. So what you saw in the van, that's probably either at our clients where they have a security operations center, the literally people monitoring all day long. And if something bad is happening, you should be able to drag and drop drop a pin. You really don't want to do remote control, because that ends up being a really bad video game. So you just drop a pin and have the machine figure out how to get to that particular location. Yes, ma'am.
How do you generate alerts by aggregating the image data, sound data, and other data?
Yes, so we generate alerts based on everything and anything that we've been able to gather. And part of it could be impartial information, which is, if it's time sensitive, it's sometimes better to have a clue than have nothing. So yeah, you end up gathering all the stuff that you knew from past history, or even last week, with all the stuff that I have in front of me, plus, if appropriate, a social feed analysis for the area that you're monitoring, if it's large enough. Could also be an interesting bit if there's some issues with that. But you try to literally gather everything you can and utilize that. How many false alarms? That's why you want humans to do more of the analysis. This is intended. So humans are really bad at doing raw data analysis. You ever watch somebody stare at a video monitor for 8 or 10 minutes of a door? I mean, you just basically lose it. So you want the machines to do the monotonous, dangerous, and computational heavy work, and you want the humans to do the strategic work. So monitoring an event, probably the litmus test is the human that looked at the event, checked it, cleared it, and said, actually, that's a false alarm, that's fine. The person that I think has the biggest issue with false alarms is ADT. On the home alarm systems, I think 90%, if I'm not mistaken, 90% of the calls in from ADT are false alarms. If you had one of these outside that home, probably that 90% should go down. Yes, sir.
Have you found any value in using your data for non-security related applications?
Can we use the data for non-security applications? The answer is yes. And one of the awful things I have to do as the CEO is spend half my day saying no. And the problem is, for a startup, you have to be really, really focused. And there are gold mines everywhere of what you can, but you have to deliver this. And yes, there's a ton of things we can do with the data. I'm not going to go into that, but yes, you can. Not something we're focused on.
Are there plans for non-lethal deterrence? Like, I mean, that light's pretty bright. If you had 3 of those coming surrounding with like spotlights, that'd be pretty deterrent.
Yeah. So are there other deterrent type of things that you can do? There's some people working on some really crazy stuff that you could put on here. Someone asked me, can you spot a concealed gun? Yes, technically we can do that, but we would also see everything else, and I'm not sure that would be a trust-engaging movement to make. Yes, sir.
I believe the biggest challenge you guys have is getting the market validation in a very scalable approach. Like this particular robot saved 20 thefts in this number of times. Like, how do you plan to get to the market validation stage as quick as possible
So the assertion is that our biggest challenge is going to be market validation. And I will assert to you that I was incorrect last year. I agreed with you last year. And so we had a very long beta test plan. And what ended up happening after all the media interest and everything else, we got flooded. We have nearly 4 dozen clients on a massive wait list. We have not made one outbound sales call. And on a really bad, rainy, muggy, awful, bloody day, those clients themselves probably worth a couple $100 million. And if we hit it out of the park, a couple billion. So I respectfully disagree. What we really need to focus on is execution. Yes?
You record a lot of data. You would also be recording data where that children are around. You have to wipe that out.
So you're recording a lot of data and there's sometimes children around. This is very client dependent. So we have some clients that would love to just dump the data every day. We don't really need it. Just make sure nothing bad happened, or 3 days or 30 days. Some financial institutions might need to keep it for 7 years. So it's what happens with that data is, again, going to be very, very client dependent. Yes?
Have you done any tests with your LiDAR or anything else to see whether they affect heart pacemakers or defibrillators?
Do the LiDARs affect pacemakers? And my friendly LiDAR supplier is shaking his head, absolutely not. No, what we have here is all commercial grade stuff that's already in production and use in industrial applications. All right, so you had a question. I am going to get to you. Go ahead. How did this robot get on that stage? I love my engineers and I love my team. They figure it out. Yes, sir. Okay. I can't hear you.
The robot is going to move less than 10 miles per hour.
Is the robot going to move less than 10 miles per hour? So from a regulatory standpoint, we really want to stay less than 25 miles an hour. Otherwise, you end up with all sorts of other issues. This particular one, we're kind of staying in the 1 to 5 mile an hour range. You probably don't want to go with this model that much higher.
With that, what is the advantage that this robot is providing rather than having a fixed set of cameras and sensors?
Ah, the fixed camera question, the never-ending fixed camera question. So first, our country is not London. We can't put cameras every 500 feet. 85% of our country is actually suburban, rural. It is not practical to put cameras every 500 feet financially or technically. Second, cameras don't actually deter crime. They're very good for forensics of what already happened, but it's not going to prevent anything from happening. And third, this is not a camera. This has a tenfold more capability. So if you wanted to replicate this, good luck putting a thermal sensor, a laser scan. I mean, your sensor payload would be bloody expensive, and there's no way that's going to pencil. Yes?
So we heard about the Knightscope. What's the promise behind the Blue
They're up next when I get off stage. And you guys pull me off whenever you like. Couple more questions. All right. Yes, sir.
How are you going to supply them? Rental, lease, purchase, all of the above?
How are we going to supply them? Machine as a service, so kind of like a subscription, annual basis. One more.
How do you come up with the 50% security rate? It will reduce the crime rate by 50%. Or what are the things?
So what is the justification, or how did you come up with reduce crime by 50%? It's not that this will. Our target is 2. So what if we could return to the US economy $500 billion? That's worth working on. That's how we came up with it. All right. I will be around or downstairs for the rest of the evening. I think I need to get the rest of the folks on here. Really appreciate your guys' attention, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.